Oregon State basketball is dying right before our eyes. In this video, we are going to take a deep dive on what is happening and where some of their players could potentially land as well. Could Scott Rueck pull a Kenny Brooks? We will cover it all, but before we start, if you like the content, then please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. All right, let's get into this. Now, I thought about starting this video with everything must go, crazy Sam sale, gone, 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 crazy prices, here we go, everybody in the portal. And the other one I was going to do that was snarky is, I guess, Oregon State's application for America's team has just been denied. But no, I thought, no, it's a bit sad this really, because this stinks. I went through the demise of the Southwest Conference, which I hated. I mean, that one was more interesting as they were all reporting each other to the NCAA. So it imploded because they all hated each other. But this is just due to incompetence. As a result, Oregon State is just getting decimated by players entering the portal. So, at the time of this recording, 7 players have gone in the portal, and 4 of those are starters. So, Raegan Beers is just the latest starter to announce that she's entered the transfer portal, the others being Talia von Oelhoffen, Tamia Gardner, and Donovan Hunter. As well, the other backups that have gone into the portal include Lily Hansford, Adley Blacklock, and Martha Peach. And the shame of this is Oregon State was a really fun team. They just really developed. So the season before, they had a lot of tough losses, and it was a team that you saw developing before your eyes during the Pac 12. One of the best college basketball games last season was Oregon State versus UCLA in Corvallis. It was just epic. I did a video on it. I compared it to like a Rocky fight. As Raegan Beers got knocked out early when she took an elbow from Kiki Rice, and it looked for all the money like they were done and they were just going to get dominated by Lauren Betts, who had just returned. During that game, they just refused to lose, and it was just epic. In the last 2 minutes, I think the lead changed like 5 or 6 times, with just game winner hit after game winner. And then it ended with Talia van Oelhoffen hitting the shot, a 3-pointer on the buzzer to win it, doing the sideline interview, being in tears, and then tears after in the post-game press conference, just giving her thanks to Scott Rueck and the culture and saying how much she loved her team. It was just great. Again, it was one of the best games all season, I thought. And at the time after the game, like Rueck was just like, we are just getting better. We're like an onion pulling back the layers, and we will just continue to improve. They weathered Raegan Beers being out for about 2 or 3 weeks. She got back in time for the Pac 12 tournament, and then they played well in the tournament. So they gave it to Notre Dame. There was a play at the end of the game where they needed a basket just to put it away, and they ran some, it was like a high pick, and then they gave the ball. It was just beautiful. And once that happened, you're like, this game is done. There's no way Notre Dame is coming back. And then they competed well against South Carolina. Indiana actually gave South Carolina a better game. I thought Oregon State had the parts to give them some trouble, but they just didn't hit enough shots in that game. That's what Rueck said after the game. And to Oregon State's credit, the specter of what would happen to the team after the season sort of hung around, but they just kept focused on their season. And Rueck just said, we can't control that or what's going to happen. There might be player movement, but all we can do is play our game. And the reason for that was in the shakeup from the Pac 12 demise, basically they were left without a chair, them and Washington State. So Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA are all going to the Big Ten. Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado are going to the Big 12. Cal and Stanford were able to scramble and land a spot in the ACC. Not ideal in terms of travel, but at least it was a major power conference. And that was the thing with Oregon State. They did not have a power conference to go to. And then within days after getting knocked out of the tournament, Talia van Oelhoffen announced that she was going into the portal, which surprised some as she was the one that had the quote, we're America's team, we're selfless, we play together, we're family, and that's the story. That's a headline that I can get behind, and I think a lot of people should too. And in truth, I think she's right. Like, they were a fun team to watch. All their parts fit so well together, and it wasn't like this superstar team where you had somebody that had usage, just unbelievable high usage. They ran it well, and everybody had their part and did their job. But all those players came to Oregon State to play in the Pac-12 in a major conference, and it was just obvious that they were all going to leave because that's why they came there to do that. And as I said in an earlier video, everybody will go, "Oh, what a shame, what a shame, this is terrible." And then everybody's like, "Okay, can we get their players?" The prizes are obviously Talia Van Oelhoffen. Raegan Beers is really the top prize, and then Tamia Gardner. In terms of Raegan Beers, when she was being recruited, I saw in an interview that she said, "I liked Baylor with Kim Mulkey. I liked Texas and Oklahoma." So those schools are obviously going to be giving her a call. I'm sure Kim Mulkey at LSU is like, "Sorry about that whole Oregon State thing, but funny enough, we've lost ourselves a center, Angel Reese, and you could slot right in and have Anissa Morrow right next to you. You two could dominate the boards and lead us right back to the top and back to the Final Four. Not to mention, we have a pretty good NIL program here at LSU to make it worth your while." The other big at Oregon State, Tamia Gardner, her choices came down to Stanford, UCLA, and Oregon State. She chose Oregon State, but who knows? Maybe she could go back to UCLA. I think they still have one slot left, or Stanford would really like to have her. Kiki, as far as I know, Kiki very often is not in the portal, so maybe that rumor is false, and maybe those two could combine to get Stanford back in the game, ready to go into the ACC. Now, one other potential option is Scott Rueck. Now, all the players that came to Oregon State, they all said they came there for the culture and what he developed there. They all loved it and how he set up that program. Raegan Beers was quite specific on that. She's like, the culture there was so good. Blacklock was the same way. They all agree that they loved the players there and what they built and how he coached them. I'm just wondering if he gets approached by another school that says, "Come to our school, build our program up," and then he gets to take the players that he had from Oregon State potentially, if they would go that way. Now, we call this the Kenny Brooks playbook. I'm leaving Virginia Tech for Kentucky, and come with me, Georgia Amore, Clara Stack, and Lexi Blue. Now, Stanford would have been a nice fit, but obviously they have given that position to longtime assistant Kate Pay, who they had promised the position. They couldn't go back on that. So the other obvious school where he could potentially land if this was to happen would be Oregon, because they have been down the last few years under Kelly Graves, as they have a little bit of a portal issue themselves, as 4 players have entered the portal, including 3 starters. And last year was rough. They went 11-22 overall and 2-17 in the Pac-12, which included 14 consecutive losses. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you could see it. Never say never. I'm just curious. I just can't see Scott Rueck sticking around Oregon State with all the players leaving and nobody wanting to play in a non-power conference. So now it's over to you. Do you see Rueck going somewhere else and taking some of his players with him, much like Brooks did from Virginia Tech to Kentucky? As well, do you think Kim Mulkey can land Raegan Beers and get LSU back up in the conversation for Final Four teams for 2024-25? Leave your comments and poison below. Thanks a lot for watching. Good night.